Coming up on River City Presents is author and poet Tylr Taylor. Welcome to River City Presents. My name is Daniel Hurt. My guest today is an author and poet who has just written his book, Between My Distortion, out now. Welcome, Tylr Taylor.
Hello, sir. How are you?
I'm good. I've been wanting to have a poet on this show for quite some time, and I've been telling people I've been waiting for you. So.
Well, that's excellent. That's good to hear. You got starting low, building up.
Oh, no. It's always a pleasure, my friend. Tell me a little bit about yourself and the viewers and how you got into writing poetry.
Well, poetry was kind of something that I fell into. I was doing a lot of drama and something my high school did called forensic acting, which was kind of like competitive speech, drama, things like that. And one of the events at the time was, poetry interpretation. The more I did it, the more I realized, I think I could do this better if it was my own work. So I started writing and kind of using pseudonyms to hide that it was me and performing my own work. And that became kind of more of a passion to me, than the actual performance itself.
Can you tell us some of those pseudonyms?
The one that I had for many years was Ivan Snow, or Leon Ivan Snow. And I stupidly published my first thing ever in a little magazine that was called WordWrite at the time, under that pseudonym. Well, now WordWrite is actually kind of like a big, illustrious magazine, and it's probably my biggest claim to fame as a writer is getting published in it, and no one believes it's me. It's not my name, yeah. But
it's funny how that happens.
It is, yeah.
But so you've been doing this for a long time. So this is writing and poetry has been something that you've been inspired by since high school, I guess.
Yeah, I started writing seriously. Storytelling has been in my life my whole life. Started writing seriously about 2009. That was my senior year, and that was when I had a student in my high school that was named Thomas Peppers. He had just published a book, and I'm like, all right, if a high schooler can publish a book, I can do that, So I pursued that for a while, and later found out that the way he did it, which is what's referred to as vanity press publishing, didn't really work for me. You need kind of a lot of money to get that. So I kind of put that idea on the back burner, and I had a teacher at my high school. I never actually had him.
Where did you go?
I went to Graves County.
Graves County High School.
There's a teacher at my high school named Nias Kadem, who was one of the founding members of the Paducah Writers Group, and he told all of his students, and subsequently I heard this, you got to go to Etcetera. That's where the writers are.
Yeah.
Went there, met a bunch of people, and it just kind of exploded from there.
Tell me about the Paducah Writers Group. You were a part of that?
I wasn't actually a founding member, but I was there in their first year, 2 years. It had started with something called the Interracial Men's Group Poetry Slam, and then kind of evolved to cover many more topics than just racial issues. And so they decided to deviate, become their own thing. That became Paducah Writers Group, which its main home was Etcetera. It was at other places the Big Apple in Murray, was connected to another organization called Guerrilla Poetry. And this all kind of amalgamated into what would become PWG, which was just a wonderful open mic and community, but it was also just a breeding ground, for artists. You would see anyone from 12 to 50 come in here and, do poetry, do writing, do music, do juggling acts. We saw essentially a bit of everything through that.
And you met a lot of people that you ended up collaborating with and had worked with down the road at the Paducah Writers Group too, right?
Probably the biggest influence of my writing career, I am the Gary Oak to his Ash Ketchum, is Samuel Hawkins.
Snacks.
Snacks,
sure.
yeah. Me and Samuel, we had kind of a friendly rivalry for many years that ended up becoming a kind of a brotherhood. And when I was in college in 2011, there's another writer that was lived in Tennessee primarily, and he went to Bethel, but he worked with us named Christopher Williams, Christopher Flowers now. And the three of us just became this holy trinity of poetry, that this triforce that we just nurtured and empowered each other, and that when Chris would eventually leave later, me and Sammy were like, we have to keep that communal idea going. We have to find poets.
And it seemed like, I've been to the Etcetera open mic nights back when they had them, and saw you perform and Snacks, and it seemed like to me that it was just a really good spot for creative forces.
Oh, absolutely.
And tell me a little bit about what the environment was like at Etcetera. I thought of it as a very welcoming atmosphere, because I just showed up and you all were very welcoming.
We appreciate that. We tried for many years to nurture it and make it what it was, this breeding ground of artists. And we had essentially people that were like our mentors that were teaching us, and then when they left, we became the mentors to the next group and tried to keep that revolution going. And we would go to the open mic, and then when we'd leave the open mic, we'd all go and gather together at like a Waffle House or an IHOP or, whatever we were doing to keep that going. And
conversation continued.
Yeah, and my first book was called Picking the Lovely, and I wrote probably 85% of that book in a yellow legal pad at Waffle House. And
that's so cool.
I still have what was essentially the first draft of that book, and it's on a yellow legal pad, and it was written at Waffle House.
Well, that's so cool. It always happens where it's where the activity's going on, your inspiration.
Oh, absolutely.
Things like that. So,
and there was something that we always used to say that, wherever your attention is where your energy is, and that became a very spiritual thing to me, but it was so literal. That was the most important thing to me for many years of my life, and it was for a lot of people. And so it had that almost energy apex kind of thing going on, and it was just a breeding ground for creativity.
And so of course they don't do it anymore. There have been some complications, unfortunately, at Etcetera that it's not allowed anymore. There's not a whole lot of places for poets to perform publicly like that.
No, there's not. And I remember the day that Etcetera decided that they weren't going to do it there anymore. I was at work, I cook, and I was just broke down on my line, and people were thought a family member had died or something. It was such a heavy thing to me. But there's just really not that kind of community like there used to be, and I think it's something a lot of people have been passionate to try to revive and bring back. But I think a lot of the founding earlier people like us, we've kind of found new avenues to write or storytell, and this book was almost like a milestone to me because it took me so long to write it. I started it back in 2014. It was almost a milestone, I need to finish this because I might not work in poetry again for a while. So I wanted to make sure this was almost like a legacy work for me.
This one that's out now.
Yeah.
So I want to ask, in terms of inspiration, and you kind of alluded to it, you get your inspiration for the things you write about your experiences in life, right? Or do you ever sit down and just crank something out? Because some people do that.
Well, it's a little bit of both. A poet I really loved, Shira Ehrlichman, wrote this poem about her grandfather, and afterwards, Taylor Molly came up and was interviewing her and said, "So what about your grandfather inspired you this?" And she just kind of laughed. She's like, "This is not my actual grandfather. I just made all that up, And that was such a revolutionary idea to me. I can write about anything. I can crank out a book of love poems about people that don't exist. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And there's something to that ability.
Absolutely. And I think that honestly is what this whole book is about, is that concept of liminality between the world that is actually real and the world that is fake. And the title of the book is Between My Distortion, and that's essentially the thesis of it is I would write poems about things that were real, and I'd write poems about things that were fake. And I take the best parts of both poems and just intermingle them. And after a while, it's am I even writing about people that exist anymore? Or am I writing about the idea of people that exist? This poem might be about, 4 real people and 1 fake person,
And sometimes when we love someone, we project things that we'd like to have about them onto
Absolutely.
them.
And almost the self-realization of that, projecting too becomes hard. And I think a lot, I think that kind of awareness that I'm writing love poems about people that don't exist, or I'm taking the best parts of people and putting them in things that aren't even real. You know, that was kind of a realization that I'm like, I want to write about that itself.
And something else that struck me, it's like, you know, through the glass darkly almost. It's kind of the, you wrote one called The Cave, I think, and it reminded me of like Plato's Republic, talking about, you see shadows on the cave.
Absolutely.
They're not what you think they are. In reality, it's something else, right?
Yeah, and I like writing about things that are liminal, things that are in between, things that, you know, may or may not exist. Like when you really think about it, a shadow is the only thing that's really two-dimensional that we experience, because, you know, even flat things have a third dimension, but like a shadow is actually two-dimensional. Like things like that space in between things where, you know, is it real? Is it temporary?
Yeah.
You know, I said something to a girl at the coffee shop the other day. You know, do you find it strange that we always wish on things that are broken? You know, wishing bones, dandelions, meteorites.
Yeah.
You know, it's just like these things that are in this transitional state and this in-between state. And that was really, I think, such a massive focus on my work.
And something else about your work and poetry in general, and I told the folks here at the TV studio before we did this, you know, I love the Homeric epics, the Odyssey and stuff like that. And those are, it's poetry, it's classic poetry, but it's also spoken. It's supposed to be heard, oral tradition, not just written or read. And, you know, your experiences of seeing you perform, it's meant to be seen and experienced, right?
Yeah, and I think that goes back to the forensic thing that was almost a seed of my writing, is the poetry I was performing. You know, was what inspired me to want to write my own poetry. Poetry as a whole, like you said, is just an oral tradition. Storytelling as a whole is an oral tradition. The privilege to sit down with a book between your hands is a very modern idea, the wholeness of humanity. And I think that as we see like the rise in audiobooks, the rise in film and video games, and what I think is really the next advent of storytelling, we're almost seeing this like archaic revival, this return to form of like audio knowledge. And I think that I mean, that's another thing in my writing I'm fascinated about, is just like going back to what we were.
Yeah, I like when I drive a lot, and I like the audiobook because it's like, for some reason, it seems like I learn or remember stories that are told to me. So if I hear a book, I'll remember something that was told to me better than if I read it. I'd need to read it 2 or 3 times.
I would agree with that entirely. And I think that's the reason a lot of these oral traditions have continued, is because you'd hear the story and you remember it, you know? But
let's talk about the book, too. There were a couple of poems that I really liked, too. You had said to me when we were planning this interview, there were a couple of pieces that were really special to you, and you said twins and sisters were. Could you tell me a little bit about
why? Unfortunately, that's not one I had immediately prepared. No. The reason I really like the poem Twins so much is there's a man, I consider him probably the best poet in Paducah. His name's Patrick Stafford. He's a phenomenal talent, and he's been my main editor and mentor and just brainstormer for many years. And those are the poems that he read where he essentially told me what he thought the book was about, and he was right. So to me, communication as a whole is just trying to take this intangible thing and make it in a point where you can understand it. And so for someone to say those are the books that they got, or the poems that they got in the book, those to me are the best poems. They're the ones that got the message through. And that message is essentially liminality, being caught in between what is real and what is fake. The poem, both Twin and Sister, are about a very real thing that happened to me where I was going through a kind of a period of mental breakdown and psychosis, where I was imagining like rooms that weren't in my house or people that weren't there. And my roommate at the time, I kept talking about this woman named Amanda, and then like completely legit, like unassociated, I started getting mail from a woman named Amanda, which only further legitimized like my insanity. So when I came out of that, I just wanted to write about that kind of state of like knowing it's fake, but it feeling so real.
What a story.
And that almost became like, I had all these poems that were just like disconnected, and Patrick saw this commonality thread, like your book is about this, and that's why I love those ones, because that was kind of the thread needle. It made it all make sense.
Another one, Premiere, I really enjoyed the one they're getting ready for a movie.
One of my favorites.
See a movie,
actually.
and there's a fire. It's just one that I enjoyed. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, that to me was just like this idea of I like writing about mental illness. I like writing about psychedelia and spirituality, and all those things kind of blend together in this awkward amalgamation to me. Premiere is about delusion. It's about the idea of these two people going to a dinner and enjoying this movie, and they're completely delusional to the fact that the movie's theater's on fire and is burning down around them, just because everything they see is so pretty. Like the fire is just, smoke, and the shattering and splintering is just confetti, and it's
Visually captivating.
Exactly. It's just they're at a loss of what is reality, or does it even matter which one is real? Kind of is what I think that the last line of that poem is. Who can see the world outside as anything more than an image of us?
Right.
That kind of idea of losing yourself in things.
And then church camp too is, what a love story.
That is actually one I did want to read.
Sure.
Church camp.
Go
I'll
right
read it.
ahead.
Yeah, if you like.
We'll talk about it after.
This was one that was very important to me. The whole darn thing was about you, I would have sworn. If only you took God out of the picture. Hands locked together like eyes, body imitating the wilted, practically fetal. I was a backfired baptism and the blurred voices of a youthful choir. Perversely shaping hymns into the image of a girl whose love was not an ocean, who did indeed let go, who was neither amazing nor graceful, still. Firmly a believer in the gospel of lust and of shame, I prayed trapped somewhere between ecstasy and blasphemy, as do all those who pray. And as if I was the answer to an invitational, a legion of hands swarmed upon me as voice overlapped into static, a burden and a privilege. As I learned for the first time how different a prayer feels when it is unanswered before it is spoken. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. Tell me a little bit about the inspiration for this.
So that is actually a completely true story of kind of when I started to deviate away from Christianity. I consider myself a very spiritual person. I practice a shamanic faith. Christianity was kind of my door into religion and into faith, as I feel like a lot of Americans it was. And I felt like I wasn't really unlearning things, but I was starting to deviate from that idea. So I was a youth minister very, very, very long ago, probably, I think I was 17 to 19 when I was doing this at Melbourne Baptist Church. And I would go and I would, preach with like various Sundays and whatnot, when my preacher was like taking a break or whatnot.
Right,
and
you fill in.
Then I would do Sunday school teaching. So I went to this church camp at about the age of 19 as essentially, I wasn't really like a counselor, I was just kind of like a guest preacher. So there was this young boy that I went up to, and I was talking with him, and I said something that this man didn't appreciate, and he just kind of pointed at me, he's like, "You're wrong, and you're the reason this generation's going to hell," and rode off in a little golf cart. And that rubbed me so wrong, and it just reminded me of all the times that like I was, praying for the wrong things. I was a young kid in high school, just in church praying that God would let this girl love me, or, just please let me make more money, or let my, let somebody in my family get a better job, or let all these things. None of them that like came to fruition. And I was just essentially praying for material things, praying for the wrong reason. And I wanted to write a poem about that, which when I wrote Church Camp, it was almost like my apology letter to all the people who like wanted me to continue down that down that road into Christianity and ministry when it just felt so toxic to me.
And you felt like it was that the reason for the prayers was selfish reasons.
Exactly, and it's just it was me wanting. It's almost like this double entendre kind of thing of like a physical woman that I actually wanted, but kind of like, the bride of Christ mentality, this idea of like the woman itself is almost God, is church, is like that Christian identity that I just felt like I wasn't receiving. And just, I was caught in this point where I was blasphemous, and I don't know, it's almost like cyclical. I feel like a lot of times people try to make poetry be prose, like they try to make it make sense, and it's not supposed to.
Sometimes
that's
it doesn't,
that's
right?
why it's poetry, So I like the idea that like an idea can be many things.
And you've since evolved your spirituality a lot since then, right?
Yeah, shamanism and my relationship to spiritual things, and almost like absurdism and faith, and a lot not taking it too seriously, which I think is kind of a thing that a lot of people don't understand. They take their religions very, very seriously. They kill people over their religions, and I'm over here like praying to the pizza god, that the pizza will be better, legitimately, like sacredly. And
I understand.
And it's something that has developed to me. And I have another piece that's actually.
Well, I just wanted to ask. I would assume that also shapes your style as a writer too.
Yeah, absolutely.
The spiritual growth that you've had.
It's all very sacred to me. Writing is a very, very sacred thing to me, and I lean into like kind of the idea. There's probably my favorite writer is Alan Moore, and he practices ceremonial magic and considers himself like a wizard, and he talks a lot about how art and magic are simultaneously the same thing. And we just don't see it because we live in such a consumeristic culture.
Oh, Lord, yes.
But like when you really look at like advertising as an art form and as a form of magic, you see how like strong art can be, because like they're essentially brainwashing entire societies. You look at propaganda, like the way in which they do this is the same way as magic. They use symbols, and that's a sigil. They use repetition, like incantations. They're doing like the exact same thing, and it's just it was kind of a weird way of looking at it and a little stretched on the truth, but I already kind of think in that perspective as a poet that
well, those things make impacts on people.
Yeah.
They drive them to do things.
Exactly. And so poetry became almost when I stopped taking it so seriously and started accepting it as a means of worship, as a means of art, that it all just kind of started to make sense.
What else do you have for us?
So I was going to read one more.
Sure.
That is one that I don't, whenever I've done any kind of get together or meeting with people, this is one I'd never really read as like a depiction of my work, and that I think is why I wanted to choose it, because it is one of my favorite poems, even though I think it's one that other people.
Which one was it?
It's called The Storm Between Us.
Oh, I remember that.
So this is about making a midnight snack. I slice the core from the apple like an alchemist, dividing the gross from the subtle. Above, a nomadic god passes, crying out for what is lost in a weathered, forgotten tongue. I'm using the good knife, the one that sharpens itself when it returns to its holder. Footsteps of thunder rattle the house like rain sticks. Everything in here sings along in melody. The aging dual blade cries out. Its shaking is a prayer for the hero to return to them. The segmented apple blooms upon the smooth cutting board, red skin glistening like altar fires. From the knife-smeared surface through the kitchen window, I see the sky is holding a net of lightning, dragging as I am applying peanut butter to apple slices. The god is dragging the earth like a river. We repeat our actions over and again in odd intervals. We are both beings of great rhythm. The sages of old speak of a god as being as strong as his followers. My peanut butter, my apple, and I, We are the lone prophets of a lonely God. It's never learned our tongue as we have forgotten its. As I cut the second to last slice, the knife licks my finger and paints the white flesh fruit. It sops up the blood like a sponge, now red on the inside and the out. I use the last slice to cauterize my cut. I think here of Abel's blood, how the earth drunk him dry, and how Cain's fruit was never enough. Surely God searched the earth for the leaking Abel, crying out, we have forgotten to listen. I ate the apple like a glowing coal, while the lightning kept scraping and the house kept rattling prayers. Every slice had peanut butter, minus the slice with the blood. I ate that one as it was. Yeah,
Cool.
It's like kind of little weird stories like that.
There's little Old Testament references.
Little Old Testament, a little bit of little bit of everything.
Yeah, no, I really like that one. I when I sent you the list of my favorite ones that I was thinking about you reading, I almost put that one on there.
Man, that makes me feel good. No, I feel like that's one for me. You know?
We're on the same. We're on the same wavelength here. But so where can folks get this? Pick it up?
So all of my work can be bought online through Amazon. My first book is called Picking the Lovely, and then I wrote a book with Samuel and Levi that was called Even and Nonsense. You can get that one also. This book will be published through Elite Publishing. I think there's still about maybe a little less than a month before you can get it online. Mm-hmm. I'm going to do a show here probably in the next few weeks where we'll have hard copies. And then obviously by the first of the year, you should be able to buy it online.
Okay. So first of the year, 2024, it should be available. Well, thank you, Tyler, for coming on the show. It means a lot to me that you're willing to be here and read some of your poetry, and I really enjoyed the manuscript that you sent me and everything.
I appreciate that.
Well, thank you for being here. You're welcome back anytime.
Thank you.
Well, that's our show. Thanks for watching. Hope you'll join us next time.